funding cut off. Well, now guess what? We here at the Orion Project and people listening at the World Puja Network can put a sheltering branch of protection and support around this scientist and bring him in and bring in these other scientists who have reproduced this system, and we can recreate this device and create it and configure it into a free energy generating system within a year or so, or at the most 2 years. And why don't we do it? This is not an urban legend. These are people we have met with and who have had real things, and not only that, but the technologies have been reproduced. Well, this is really exciting and good news. But the tragic part of it is that it's sitting there languishing and no one's doing anything with it because it was, quote, too successful. And I think that what we have to realize is that to make this real, to actuate it, to manifest these new sciences, we're going to have to all pull together, and the public are going to have to pull with us.
Well, that's a wonderful example, I think, of the problem that we're in, and the fact that people don't have much hope because all we see right now is solar and wind and ethanol, all of which have their problems. They help the problem around the edge, but they don't really get at the core issue.
Right. Why don't you tell folks about the thermal exchange generator experiments that we're doing with some people and how that might help?
Yeah, maybe this is a good time to go through and talk about some of these technologies that we're looking at. And I can classify, or we classify these technologies into what we term transitional technologies, and then sort of further down the line, more robust, perhaps, breakthrough or brand new technologies. And several of the technologies that we call transitional technologies are those that take known physics, known by your local university and physicists, and or known technologies, and sort of play with them, not exactly play with them, but engineer them to be energy producing. And let me give you an example. It's been known for many years, probably almost a century, about compression and vapor engines or vapor technology, which really runs your refrigerator or runs an air conditioner or runs.
Most people don't realize that those are 4 to 6 times over unity, meaning they put out 4 to 6 times more power than you actually put into them.
Exactly. So you run your refrigerator or you run your heat pump on electricity. It turns the pump, compresses the gases, but it extracts heat from the environment, compresses it, and then you get the heat into the house. So the actual heat that you produce from this technology is 4 to 6 times more than the heat because of this transfer system than you would have if you just ran resistance heating or little hot things in the house to heat the house. So that's a technology that, if it's reversed around a bit, and could actually drive a small generator, which could be designed to provide several kilowatts, up to maybe perhaps 10, to run a house. Now, there are problems with this, and we're working with several teams working with this technology. And, why hasn't it been done well? It's not as easy as one might think, and part of it has to do with the thermal gradients between, say, a hot day outside and sort of a cooling environment. Think about large power plants, which use large thermal gradients in the local ocean or river to cool a lake, to cool down the 500,000 degree steam that comes out of the system. So when you're working with lower temperature gradients, or delta T's as it's called, it requires some trickier thing. But we're working with several teams working on this type of technology, and we'll see whether it can be done. It may be necessary.
Well, actually, we have spoken to people in the past where it has been done, but those technologies end up either being suppressed or bought out and put on a black shelf. And by the way, this is not an urban myth. There was the Jerusalem Post, which is the main language newspaper, English language newspaper in Israel, had an article a couple months ago about a man in Israel who had developed a system that was dealing with water and getting the hydrogen and oxygen out of water on a highly efficient basis. And he was offered tens of millions of dollars by, quote, an oil interest to basically buy it out and put it on a black shelf. And this was in the mainstream press. So, this happens every day. And, the average inventor who comes up with a breakthrough like this, who's struggling to feed his family, if somebody shows up and offers them $30 million or $50 million, they're going to say, Eureka. Well, unfortunately, It ends up in the black pit of Calcutta, never to be seen again. So what we're describing here with this sort of heat pump technology being turned on its head as an electric generator actually has been done, but they end up never getting out there. So this is one thing we think that is viable, that is using known refrigerant and heat pump technology. And I think the other one that's important for us to go into very quickly here before we run out of time is the fact that you can use a type of sophisticated electronics and split hydrogen and oxygen off of water and then burn it as a clean source of fuel, because when you burn it, all you get out of the tailpipe is water vapor, which you can actually condense and put back in through the system. So the energy is enormous potential in water, and every home in America has about 400 gallons of water it consumes, the average home, and most of that is gray water from showers and sinks that could be filtered,
more than one would
run through one of these systems. And what you would have is a water-to-fuel generator that would be running your house for as much power as you need, and eventually your car could be converted this way. And this apparently by Stan Meyer and other people have been done. We're working with some teams now who are experimenting with the electronics, and we don't want to get into the esoterics of the physics, but basically when you normally do electrolysis and split hydrogen and oxygen off of water, it takes a huge amount of electricity, and it's sort of like it's a very good way of creating energy. But if you have these Tesla-type coils and really advanced electronic circuits, you can use very little electricity and get a lot of this hydrogen and oxygen gas out of water on an over-unity basis, meaning you get more power out than you put in, and then you have something where you can have a closed-loop system that would be self-running and run a generator. And this, of course, has been done reportedly by Stan Meyer and his team before he died, and by others. And what we want to do is get the best brains together in the world to recreate those systems and perfect them, because that's something where, look, we've already got millions of generators out there and about 1 billion vehicles on the road. And imagine if all of a sudden your car could be running on the excess water that you have running through your house anyway, by having this kind of electrolysis unit and some additives and some modifications to the engine. Well, your only pollution then would be water vapor, and your only cost would be water that you're already putting into the sewer from your showers and sinks. So this is an enormous breakthrough that could transform our society very quickly, because you don't have to scrap every engine and generator on the planet. So that is something we're working on, and people need to understand that that's a really viable system. But it needs R&D and development to get it to the point where it's going to be strong enough to run your home.
Right. That's the second example of a transitional technology. One that uses existing infrastructure with modifications to enhance our energy production. And in fact, right now there are a number of companies that sell these generators that are not even over unity at this point, but they do increase mileage, gas mileage, and reduce pollution coming out of the tailpipe. So that's a second type of technology. A third type is perhaps a little more esoteric, and that deals with magnetic motors, quote, permanent magnets, that can be used in various configurations to run a motor, which in turn can run a generator, etc. The problem is looping the system and producing excess energy within that system. Under normal conditions, basically the best you can do is kind of one-to-one. It runs a generator, which then puts out power, which runs the motor, and you don't have any excess to run your house. However, there have been some recent breakthroughs, in fact very recently, using special kinds of magnets called asymmetric magnets, which it appears anyway, will solve that problem. That's another area that we're working with several people on that area, but it's... Well,
and we know that, there are reports that Nikola Tesla, 100 years ago had discovered this phenomenon, and had self-running cars and self-running generators because the energy was coming from this, I called it earlier in this show, the zero-point energy field, but others have called it the quantum vacuum flux field.